Got 3 people here. We're live. Hey, everybody. We've got Carlos. You should be. See where my hand is? You should be there where my hand is. But not. Yes. Not Carlos. Wait and get a couple more. Hopefully, JC woke up.
He did.
Good. 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 Do you know what we're talking about in today's class session?
I don't.
Would you like to know?
Sure.
We're talking about pedigrees. A lot of students have indicated.
Triple H.
Exactly. That they're not sure how to set up a pedigree, so I'm going to read them a little story. And then from our little story, we're going to set up a pedigree.
Is that why I'm playing a part in this?
No, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you on camera. But no, you're going to play a part because in just a moment, as people are getting here, I made it thanks to Carlos. I'm cold and tired. That's okay. Hi, Yasmin. How you doing? Isabel, good to see you.
Good morning.
Miss Patino, how you doing? How you doing? Okay, so before we get started, and I'll touch on this again, I'm doing very well. I'm glad you asked. Carlos, would you like to give the little announcement?
So April 8th, which is a Wednesday, if I am not mistaken, we're having a cooking vlog, which is the pasta cooking vlog, and then that Sunday, April 11th, we're having the cheesecake cooking vlog.
What kind of cheesecake?
The Japanese jiggly cheesecake.
We have no idea how to make that, so
Should be
maybe
fun.
it'll go well. Maybe it'll go terribly. I could never be mad at you, JC, because if I ever got mad at you, I'd just punch you. No, I'm kidding. All right, Carlos, thank you. Thank you for your help with the announcement. Here, this one's for the boys. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yes, JC, this was a lot of, you had mentioned it, and then because you mentioned it, a lot of others did. One thing, though, that would make, before, again, we jump into the actual pedigree stuff for today, one thing that would make the cooking vlogs a little bit more fun, I think, you don't have to do this, but it'd just be interesting, is if it felt more like personable, a little more fun. So if you would like, if you have the chance, if you think of any kind of a question that you would like to ask me, or you would like to ask Carlos, or you'd like to ask Ayana, it could be a question about what kind of anime Carlos likes. It could be a question about what kind of music Ayana listens to, or when she first learned to sew. You could ask them about what it's like having to deal with the insanity of Mr. Lay all the time. You could ask me about whatever you choose to ask about. But if you'd like to ask any of those types of questions, go ahead and you can email me, or if it's a kind of a question that you don't know that you want to email me, but you do want it to be asked, I will be putting out a video later, not one of the classroom videos, but I'll be putting out a video later that'll have some contact stuff for them. Okay, so now on a more functional point, a little bit of scheduling stuff. Today what we're going to talk about is a lot of people indicated that there was a little bit of struggle with setting up pedigrees. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And then at the very last part of today, I'm just going to check in a little bit about some percentage stuff, because I did send out something to you. And I added percentage questions on there. I do want to keep pushing forward with the SAT stuff. So the percentage questions that are on there, they were actually the formative assessment that we were going to take the very first Friday of shutdown. So we're going to keep moving with that. I just want to make sure that whenever it is that you do take the SAT, and you will take it, that you are as prepared as possible. We don't want to... I think the worst thing that we could do during the shutdown, and I've been maintaining this for, 3 weeks now, is to let this be just a vacation where we let all the skills that we have just lapse. I think we push through, we continue to develop our skills, we continue to get better, stronger, more knowledgeable. So we will be doing that. During next week is spring break, as I've said before, I am going to maintain this. I will post videos that are nonsensical, but I won't be posting anything academically. I also will not be posting assignments on Google Classroom during that week because it is your spring break, and I know I know that like, well, we're at home already, but at the same time, I want you to take that moment to breathe, relax. The only reason I'll be posting stuff is just to kind of keep us connected. However, I will be available if you have questions, concerns, comments, anything like that about anything really. If you need to, yes, if you need to connect in any way, so if we need to do like small group or one-on-one Zoom to explain schoolwork, we can still do that, and we can still possibly schedule something that's just a relaxed silliness time, just to make sure that one, you're able to connect with your peers, and two, that we're able to make sure that we're not getting too stressed out about the stuff that's going on around us, right? There's a lot that could to be stressed out about for a lot of people right now, and we just want to make sure that we're moving through and keeping ourselves in the best headspace possible. So, that all being said, as long as we're prepared, let's talk about pedigrees. Now, going through pedigrees, one of the issues that people have indicated they have is just setting it up at the beginning. So I wrote some stuff down really quickly today as I was eating my delicious oatmeal and drinking my coffee. I wrote this down. So I tell you a little story now. You ready? You're ready. Once there was a boy named Edward who married a woman named Pauline. I guess he wasn't a boy. He was a man when they got married. That would be weird. If he was a boy and she was like a full-grown woman, like Anakin and Padme, that relationship, the years always seemed really weird. I don't know what happened there, but like he's like 5 when they meet and she's like 18, and then I don't know. Maybe she's 20. I don't know, but that was always weird. There was a man named Edward who married Pauline. Okay, we got to start. They had 5 daughters. The oldest, Janet, had 3 children, each from different fathers. Anthony was the middle child. Joey, the youngest. The oldest was a girl named Tanya. Then was Rosemary, the mother of Johnny, Brian, and April, from her husband John. After her came Lori. Lori married Randy and had a son, Randall. They later had 2 daughters, Christine and Karen. Next in line was Karen. Her and her husband Jerome had 3 children. A daughter, Laura, who was the youngest, and 2 boys, Jerome and Jeffrey. Jeffrey was the middle child. Finally was Brenda, the youngest of all the 5 daughters. She and her husband Dennis adopted a son named Colin. Of all of Edward and Pauline's grandchildren, only 2, Karen and Brian, are deceased. Many of their grandchildren had children, but the most important 2 were born to Anthony, who at the time was married to Yvette, and those children are Ayana and Carlos. Okay, so we've got this story, right? This is just sets up. This is the long line of family. All these people. Now, in a pedigree, right, typically we're going to be looking for a trait, right? We're going to be looking at a particular trait, like maybe polydactyly, maybe we're looking at hemophilia, Huntington's. There's a whole lot of things that we can be looking at. But before we can start to look at where this trait occurs, the very first step is merely setting up a pedigree. And I think this is one of the spots where we're starting to have a little bit of run-in, okay? This is one of the spots where we're having just some difficulties. Now, we did one off of a problem, but I thought it might be nice for me to run you through one. Now, this is, of course, my family. And truth be told, I didn't include the reason Ayana and Carlos, I list them as the most important is because I don't know everybody's children's names. I don't keep in contact with all of my cousins because I don't know. That's the way it is. I'm sorry. Bad Mr. Lay. But let's look at what we've got here. So the first thing that was mentioned was Edward. Hopefully this shows up well. I'm going to try to write it as darkly as I can. So the first thing that showed up was Edward. And since he was the first one listed, I'll just write him first. Doesn't mean males are more important. It doesn't mean anything like that. And I apologize if that message is sent. But we're going to write him first. Now, since we're not looking at alleles, I'll just write Edward here. I'll write Ed. Now, he was married to Pauline. Okay? So, since he was married to Pauline, we put that line there. And now, for me, the easiest thing is, it then says that they had 5 daughters. So I know I'm going to need a relatively long line, right? Is Mr. Lay from, I don't know, I think some true. But they have 5 daughters. So, Carlos,
Yeah.
check on your sister, see if she's coming back.
Okay.
So the first one they had over here is Janet. Okay? Janet was the firstborn. She's the oldest. So is Mr. Lay frozen? No, he froze on mine. I'm sorry if I'm frozen on yours. Issue with live, especially with internet connections. Don't worry about it. So Janet's the oldest, so we'll write her in first. We then go on to the next daughter. What's up, son?
She's not coming back. So I go.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so if you could find it so you can watch and you can answer any questions that come up. Next in line is Rosemary. We're just going to write her as Rose. Then Lori. Then Karen. Then Brenda, who I didn't give a lot of room to. Sorry about that. Now, what I would like you to do if you can, you might not have the notes, but if you do have the notes, I'd like you to look through, because if you notice, one of the unique things that we had is on here we're going to have an adopted child. So if you can find how that looks and how that's unique and pop that into the chat, Carlos will be listening or monitoring it. Ayana is busy right now. So Carlos will be monitoring and he'll be able to tell us what your answer is. You left everything at, you know what, a lot of us left everything at school, and that's okay, because if you left everything at school, that's why we're doing it this way. I don't want you to have to find these things on your own. Okay, so the next thing that we have is we want to fill in.
Juan said, isn't it like brackets?
It is. But it's not Juan, that's JC.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
He does not like being called Juan. Now, Janet gives us a particular problem, which has been true. I've been saying this my whole life. So with Janet, because the children have, so we're gonna do something like this. And we're gonna put over here, the oldest is Tanya. The most important is Anthony. Actually, I've got these coming off in this weird way. Clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so here is Ike, and they had Tanya. And then here, we'll say Al, and they had this handsome guy named Anthony. He's not that handsome, not that handsome. And then over here, Joe, and they had Joey. Not judging you, Mom, not judging you, don't watch this video. Then over here, Rose, she married John, and they had, in order, they had Johnny, this is, looks ugly, there we go. They had Johnny, Brian, April. Now the biggest thing is this is very tedious work, and I understand that. Then over here, Laurie married Randall. They They had their 3. There's a lot of people having 3 kids in this family. I bucked to the trend. They had Christy and Karen, and over here, Randy. Then Karen, she married Jerome. This is where Carlos's middle name comes from. Jerome. They had, whew. Now, it said on here, it mentions Laura first, but it mentions her as the youngest. So we put her name here. And then it mentions the 2 boys, Jeffrey and Jerome, and it tells us that Jeffrey is the middle child, and Jerome, thus, must be the youngest. And then, in brackets, Dennis and Brenda had Colin. He's in brackets because he's adopted. Now remember, the reason that we've got an adopted child in brackets, it's not because we're saying adopted children aren't as valid. It's not because we're saying adopted children aren't a full part of the family. It's because if we're looking at a genetic trait, which is the biggest reason that pedigrees are used, if we're looking at a genetic trait, an adopted child either could be where the genetic trait came into the family line, or an adopted child may not show that trait. And if we're looking at it, why doesn't this child, why? Because they have different genetics, right? Doesn't mean they're not a part of the family. It all depends on how you define family, and I don't define it by blood personally, so Colin's just as much a cousin of mine as anybody else. So, there's a couple things. Now, we mentioned that Anthony over here, and this is very jammed in because of room. Anthony over here has 2 kids, Ayana, and the less important Carlos. I mean, the very important Carlos. Sorry, Carlos. Okay. There was something else that I mentioned about 2 children who are on this pedigree. There's something else I mentioned about 2 children who are on this pedigree. Somebody not named JC, try to remember what I said about 2 children who are on this pedigree that I need to fill in. It takes a minute, Carlos.
Yes, I know.
So you monitor the chat and see when they tell me what's missing on this pedigree from my story. Can you see everything on here?
Me?
Yeah. What did they say?
Yeah. Nothing yet.
Oh my God, he coughed. Okay. So what is it? Didn't you say 2 of them? I did say 2 of them died, Matthew. Thank you. How will I indicate the 2 that died? The 2 that died are Karen here.
What's the question?
And Brian.
Excel's question is, how would we label children with different parents?
Do you mean like different parents as in, say my sister Tanya and I have different fathers but the same mother? Is that the question? Because I have it over there, but it's a little difficult to see. I can do it on the smaller board.
This is a little bit of
Stepchildren. Stepchildren, I can show you that. I'll show you that in just a moment. So first, the children who have passed away, if we remember, and I think this is kind of brutal, but it's what they do. We put a line through them. Now, the 2 things that you would do, you have to cross them with a line. Perfect. Yeah, with a line. Perfect. So here's the thing that we would have, right? So let's say we've got let's say it was going off of me, right? So this is Mr. Houlet, right? And now let's say then we're looking at my 2 children. This will make sense, right? So we've got 2 children here, and this is to answer the question about stepchildren. So we've got the 2 children here. I don't know why I put Carlos first, because he definitely doesn't come first. Ayana and then Carlos, right? Now, remember, because I'm now divorced, we put lines through this. Now, let's say I remarried. Okay, let's say I remarried. Now, if I remarried over here, if we didn't have children, but let's say I married Pearl. I married a very old woman.
No, Wizona.
Wizona. Inside joke. I married Wizona. We just call her Wiz. Now, if we had children, they would go here. So we would have a daughter named Pearl. But if Wizona had children with someone else from SpongeBob. So if Wizona had children with SpongeBob, we could either put them over here, or if we didn't want to put SpongeBob on, we could just have those children come from her, just like this, right? Like not even show their father. These are the two ways we could do it, right? We could do it this way. So if we wanted to show lineage, we could do it this way. So we've got Bob. This is for you, JC. We've got Bob and Patrick, right? We could do it this way. Or if we wanted to show the whole thing and show that she had been married, we could have the line going over here with the lines through it like that, right? So it really depends on how much you want to get into it. A half brother, I can show that because this is, I apologize right now, I gotta ignore this. My phone is ringing because my mother doesn't realize when we go live on YouTube. So she's trying to call me right now. Maybe she knows that I'm talking about her. So what we have right here, right, is we've got Janet. Okay? Now, at one point, Janet met a guy named Ike, and they had Tanya. It was my family, right? But then that didn't work out. That didn't stick around. So we crossed that out. Now, Janet then met someone else named Al. That wasn't his full name. I think it was Alphonse. I don't remember. And they had Anthony. So what you can see here is, how would you show if someone became a widow and remarries? If they became a widow and remarried, I'll change that really quickly. So here what we have is, because I like the widow and remarried, that's another question. But you can see here, this relationship ended. This child is still around, and it's a child of Janet. And Anthony, also a child of Janet, right? So we're half siblings because we're connected through our mother Janet. But this shows the full parentage, right? Now, if, let's say Janet became a widower. She became a widower. What we would show is this marriage. And instead of showing the lines through, let's say my mom was married to Anakin. Now, instead of showing the lines through the marriage, indicating divorce, we'd show a line here, right? Because we'd be looking at it and we'd be like, oh, Anakin died, right? And so even if they had a child, the child would still go from here. But here we've got the individual crossed out because the individual has passed away. We don't have a lot of time left. We've got about 5 minutes left. So in that 5 minutes, the big thing that I want to do is explain the main assignment that you have. I'd like you to try to get it done by Friday. And the reason I'm pushing for Friday will make sense at the end. So what I want you to do is I now want you to do very similar to what I did. First, write down the family lineage and then draw a pedigree that shows it. Now, I'm giving you a lot of freedom. Because there's a couple things. One, maybe you're not that close to your family, or maybe you just don't feel comfortable using your own family. So if you'd like to, you may use your own family. However, if that's something that it's not what you want to do, right? You either don't feel comfortable sharing that much about your personal life, or you don't know that much. Again, that's up to you. So what you can do then is you can use a either family that you create in your mind. You can connect characters who don't have an actual connection, as long as the pedigree matches your writing, right? And then the other thing you can do, and this is especially for those of you who are, I'll explain that, especially for those of you who are in a fan group. I guess I could put my example on the Google Classroom. I'll redo it and make it neater. So what you would do is you can use like from fiction, right? So if there's like the movie Coco, and you wanted to put all the people in the movie Coco, you can do it as large as you want. There's a set number of people and a set number of generations you have to go through. It is in the directions. But you can do both sides of your family, so you can have one that's your mother's side, one that's your father's side. We're all different, right? Like, I couldn't do my father's side because I never met them. Juan Rodriguez, you love it when I call you that. JC, no. Right now, we're not focusing on showing a trait. That's a brilliant question. I'm really glad you asked it, because it's one that a lot of people are going to have. Right now, what we're focusing on is, one, being able to write a paragraph that describes a family lineage, either our own or, again, a fictionalized one. And two, being able to take that and use it to create you need to use more than 20 people, Carla. Use that to create a pedigree from, right? Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take your pedigrees that you send to me, I'm going to play with the images, and I'm going to write a quiz that asks some questions about these, right? And we'll be taking that after spring break, and after spring break we'll also be focused on seeing how well we, as a group, how well we can then start to fit in a trait. So, because where we're at right now, we're getting really towards the end of the complex genetics chapter. If we were in an actual, if we were in the building, we'd be starting to focus on getting ready for a unit test. So what we're going to be doing is really focusing on making sure that we understand as much of the stuff as well as possible, so we can then move on to having some conversations about what evolution is and ecology. So, if you have no more questions, So if you have no more questions, I would like to remind you that on April the 8th, Carlos?
8th is pasta, 11th is jiggly cheesecake.
Yeah, so on April 8th, we will be making we'll be doing a tutorial on how I just kind of make a fun, delicious pasta that I like using shrimp or chicken, protein of your choice. I like shrimp. We will also be, if you have questions, email me with questions, and I will ask, especially if they're for my children as opposed to for my children to ask me, because it's more fun if I interview my children while cooking. Hopefully you understand all the information. Do the pedigrees. If you run into any trouble, please email me as soon as you can. And for anybody that came late, please remember that although next week I will not be posting new academic video content, nor will I be posting new assignments, I will be available via Zoom or whatever format, Google Hangouts, whatever, to answer questions about any of the work that you need, or just to check in with you, okay? So if you need to get a hold of me next week, even though we're on spring break, I'm still going to be around, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that you have. That is our time for today, this week, actually. I will see you. Wave, Carlos. Bye.
Before we end it, to answer JC's earlier question of can we have more fun Zoom calls, yes.
Like he gets to make any decisions. See ya. Bye.
Bye.